Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. I know people are probably trickling in from grabbing some more coffee, grabbing a snack, grabbing some lunch. We'll give everyone a minute to trickle in. My name's Marley Zeno. And while we are waiting for folks to join us, please introduce yourselves in the chat. I'm joined by my colleagues today, Michelle, Sarah, Bobby. We also have Amanda with us, who's been so helpful getting everything set up. Awesome. Hi, we have Earl, who's an LAUSD teacher. Martha from Mexico is here. Lynn from LAUSD is here. San Francisco, Phoenix. We've got folks from all over, a lot of folks from LAUSD. Design thinking teacher from Maine. I love it. Wonderful. Lots of LAUSD. Washington State. I'm from Washington State. Hi, Heidi. A principal. Thank you all so much for being here, especially on a Saturday. I know you have a lot of things you can be doing with your time, so we really appreciate you being here today. Wonderful. So we will go ahead and get started. The session is being recorded, so if you have to step away at any moment, or if you have a friend who wanted to be here and life happens and they couldn't be here today, if they signed up, they will have access to this recording. So no concerns at all there. So we'll go ahead and get started. My name is Marley Zeno. I'm a professional learning strategist at BrainPOP. I provide professional development to teachers all around the country and around the world. And before that, I was a professional development provider to teachers of language learners. And I was a teacher of English language learners in New York City public schools, grades K through 5 for 7 years, and a professor of education, an adjunct professor of education at Hunter College in New York City. So thank you all so much for being here today. We're going to get into it. I'm so happy to see so many Washington State folks. I currently live in New Jersey, but I'm from Washington State, so that makes my heart really happy. And I'm joined, you'll see my colleague Michelle in the chat, you'll see my colleague Sarah in the chat, and we're all here to dive in and talking about digital citizenship today. And we know you have so many things on your plate all the time, especially as I think about being an elementary school teacher and teaching literally every subject. We know your days are really packed with the standards you're addressing, the different curricula you're working on, and meeting the needs of all your students. So we're going to talk about finding time to cultivate digital citizenship skills beyond just Digital Citizenship Week or maybe a STEM class, but putting it into all of your content areas. And my colleague Kristen is here as well. So if you see any of my BrainPOP colleagues in the chat, they'll be there to help me answer questions for you and provide some resources for you as well. So let's get into it. The goal for our time together is that after this hour, you will be able to both teach digital citizenship concepts directly and also embed digital citizenship in the content areas. You have the option to have your camera on if you would like to. You also may have it off. That's totally up to you. You are all adults here. And depending on our total number, we may break into smaller groups or we may just stay together as a whole group. So totally up to you if you would like to keep your camera on or off. Our goal is I've introduced myself, you've introduced yourselves, check, we've shared our outcome. We're going to look at different definitions of digital citizenship. We're going to talk about direct instruction of concepts of digital citizenship. And then we're also going to talk about most of our time together will be around embedding those skills across the content areas. And we'll give you some time to reflect. So we want to start with a question, right? Why are we all here today, right? We're all interested in digital citizenship. And I loved the framing around not just what we don't want students to do, but what we really want them to do, right? We want the positives of what we want them to do. So 2 guiding questions to start. When and how are your students living digital lives? And what are your greatest concerns about their digital lives? We can do those in the chat. I'm going to be documenting this in a BrainPOP tool called Make a Map, just to document all of our ideas in one place. Oh, yes, Gloria, hi. Always happy to see a BrainPOP certified educator. Nice to see you again. Okay, so what are your greatest concerns about students' digital lives and where are they living these digital lives? And I'll document these here for us. There isn't a sign-in for the session. You being here is your attendance. Concerns about phones, right? They're always on the phones. Bullying, social, emotional impact. I'm trying to type as fast as I can to document your ideas. Not knowing those in-person social skills. They live digital lives in school, at home, right? Bullying, media balance. Media balance, addiction to online lives, not focusing academically. And they move, I like how you said that, Kate, that your students are moving seamlessly between their digital lives and their non-digital lives. Vetting facts. Academic integrity. Right, it's very easy to share sources without vetting them. It's very easy to plagiarize. I'm looking at preschool. They don't use tablets very often and they're getting too much time at home potentially. Digital footprint, right? Where are the safe boundaries in the digital world? Using digital tools for good, influence, lack of human connection. They don't know how to leverage tech to amplify their voice, how to lead with tech. I love that. Right, and in pre-K, right, teaching those boundaries, right, around and even having that self-awareness. And even not, I mean, as someone who has definitely spent way too much time scrolling on their phone when they should be sleeping, that is a skill many adults do not yet have. Risky behaviors, right, and modeling how do we interact with each other safely in all the aspects of our lives, our digital lives, our in-person lives, in school, at home, our social lives, our little ones. Right, so we have a lot of concerns, right? There's a lot of potential and also a lot of concern. So now, I just said we don't want to name only what we don't want students to do. So now we're going to shift this in a more positive direction. What does it mean to be a good digital citizen? We've named a lot of our concerns. You don't need to sign in. Your attendance, you being here now, is your sign in. So now, what does it mean to be a good digital citizen? We've talked about the things we're concerned about: boundaries, balance, distraction, academic integrity, the social consequences of a life online. So to be a good digital citizen, right, citing sources, right, tech as a tool, maybe not just a means, not just an end, but a means to an end. Balanced screen time, kindness. I love that. Kindness, respect. Right, the same way we want our students to engage with each other kindly in our classroom, we want them to engage kindly with anyone in their digital lives. Empathy, right? That's a social and emotional learning skill for students' whole lives. Empathy. Ooh, thinking before you post, right? It's so easy to post without stopping thinking, right? Those metacognitive skills, those self-regulation skills. Right, protecting your private information, knowing what should be private. Right, so we're seeing both academic and social positive behaviors we want to see in digital citizens. Voice amplification, I love that, Erin. Right, empathy and sympathy. Right, using it to amplify your voice. I want to add that one. I really like that one. Knowing what to watch or read, right? Making sure you're actually evaluating sources that you're looking at, having those media literacy skills, competence using digital tools, right? So these skills encompass a really wide range, right? Some are academic, some are social emotional. Yes, exactly, Z. Just because it's on the internet doesn't mean it's true. Check multiple sources. I think my generation was one of the first generations who was using Wikipedia a lot, and I had to have teachers tell me, you can't use that as a source. Look, I can edit it to whatever I want. Please don't use that as a source. And that was a lesson I needed. That was something that needed to be explicitly taught. Awesome. Okay, great. This is a great way to root our thinking for the day in what concerns do we have and what are the skills we want to cultivate in our students. So now we're going to pivot back to some different definitions of digital citizenship, right? We've named some behaviors we want to see. We're going to look at 3 different definitions of digital citizenship and then see the themes across them. So DigCit LA defines, I can read aloud to you, I can use my kindergarten teacher read aloud voice, the practice of cultivating a positive, authentic digital footprint that can be leveraged for college and career success. And that was named in a lot of the skills that you mentioned, right? The amplifying your voice, kindness and respect, a positive footprint. I love that, Gloria. The digital world is like the real world. It needs to be a safe space where everyone is valued and respected. We also pulled from the ISTE standards. Students recognize the rights, responsibilities, and opportunities, right? That's a lot right there. Rights, responsibilities, and opportunities of living, learning, and working in an interconnected digital world. And they act and model in ways that are safe, legal, and ethical. Right. And these are all things that you've named, right? Making sure that you understand privacy, understand citation. And the third definition is the common sense education definition, the responsible use of technology to learn, create, and participate. And that connects again to all of these things you mentioned, right? We're citing sources, we're amplifying our voice. People talked about students using digital platforms to amplify their voice and share what they're thinking. And I think that that's represented in this definition as well. And yes, that digital footprint lasts forever and follows you forever. I was also in the generation where people were saying your Facebook is visible to more people than just your friends. And that was also a lesson we had to learn. So we have these 3 definitions from DigCit LA, ISTE, and Common Sense. And I'd love to know in the chat, take a moment to read these again and share what do these 3 definitions have in common and what themes do they share? Right, what are there words you notice appearing in each of these definitions? Are there common themes you see from all 3 of these? Yes, we're seeing responsibility, being responsible. I see responsibility a lot. Learning, they all share this positive learning and working environment. Authenticity, kind and responsible. And that was what you named, right? That was what you want to see from your students. You want to see kindness, you want to see responsibility. Interconnected. ESL, right? All 3 can be carried to life beyond school. That it's a tool, right? We see the word create multiple times. Responsible and positive. Oh, I love that. Computer science literacy should be our students' 2nd or 3rd language, and being a digital citizen included responsibility online. An advocate for positive influence in virtual and the real world. Right, so we're seeing a lot of these common themes. Yes, I see a hand up. If that is a purposeful hand up, you can unmute or you can ask a question in the chat. If it's an accidental one, we'll keep going and you can always raise it later. Awesome, so we're seeing these threads across these definitions. We want our students to be able to engage responsibly. We want them to engage respectfully and use digital citizenship skills to use technology as a tool, right? Technology is not a means to an end. It's not just you should know how to use that computer, but why do we want students to know how to be comfortable and agile with computers, right? We have actual skills and behaviors that we want them to use their tools for. The first definition, Rob, is from the DigCit LA site from LAUSD. Okay. So now that we're grounded in these different definitions, the behaviors we want to see, the concerns we have, we're going to talk really just for a little bit about teaching the concepts of digital citizenship directly. You've had DigCit Week. I'm actually going to pause before we dive into this and I share some resources with you, how have you been teaching digital citizenship, right? We are at the end of Digital Citizenship Week. Give me 1 or 2 examples. How are you currently teaching these concepts to your students? I'm seeing a lot of common sense media. I pulled from that as well. Awesome, Stacy, once a month during homeroom class. So you have it not just DigCit Week, but carrying throughout your year. Common sense media and BrainPOP resources during computer science instruction, modeling, mini lessons and Nearpod lessons, lots and lots of common sense, yes. Code.org resources, documentaries, interviews with students, I love that. Connecting it to real life, Minecraft has digital citizenship resources, right? So you have almost too many, you have a lot of resources available to you. I love that, Jen. 1 lesson a year, it does not cut it. Anytime there's a teachable moment, several revisits a year. I love that. And Rob, I found it was a part of every class lesson when we used to teach, when we used tech or worked in groups. It was passively taught. Songs and common sense media. Yeah, so you're tapping into a lot of the resources and you're going to learn about more resources throughout the day. So I'm going to share a few with you, and then we're going to dive into carrying this throughout other content areas, since we know you have a lot to teach and a lot to do. So I want to share with you, I know that several of you already shared that you have used BrainPOP to teach digital citizenship. I want to highlight that we have made a collection of our lessons on our topics on digital citizenship. They include ones on computer programming. There's also conflict resolution, right? That social and emotional learning skill kept coming up. Things like copyrights, cyberbullying, digital etiquette. We have a whole collection of topics that are great for directly teaching those skills and those concepts. We have not only topics, but also games and a whole collection of educators' resources to help you if you're looking for lesson plans. You can look at on a Sunday night. I've used these myself as a teacher, and you'll see a lot of the concerns you raised, something about media literacy, evaluating sources. We have a whole topic on online sources, as well as some of the more SEL topics like peer pressure, cyberbullying, digital etiquette, and conflict resolution. So just know you can add this to your toolkit of resources along with your common sense lessons. Cyber civics, I noticed that as well. That was a new one to me. Minecraft digital citizenship, that's a new one to me as well. And I want to highlight quickly, we have pacing guides for K-2, 3-5, and 6-8 on different topics. So if you're working with little ones, I noticed we have all the way down to pre-K with us today. We have a K-2 pacing guide just on internet safety. So I can, me or one of my colleagues will pop this link in the chat for you if you're curious to check it out. Again, something to add to your toolkit along with the other resources that you're using. Awesome. And Michelle just shared that link in the chat if you'd like to check it out. And I'm sure by the end of your day today, you will have so many more resources in your toolkit or a deeper understanding of the resources you already have. So now we're going to turn to the real meat of it, the meat and potatoes, is embedding digital citizenship across all subjects. Right? You may not have a computer science period in your day. You may not have, you may not have that homeroom time to teach these skills. So I want to make sure that we can, because all these skills you mentioned, none of these are limited to what would be a computer science period in your day, right? Amplifying your voice, kindness and respect, citing sources, self-regulation skills like, have I been on my iPad too much today? Thinking before you speaking to each other respectfully, empathy. These are all skills that can happen in and out of the digital world and can happen across your content areas. So it's not like these are only skills your students use when they're sitting in front of a computer, right? So we're going to talk about these skills that you named, what it means to be a good digital citizen, and how you can, you see the motion I'm doing, pull that thread throughout your day. And yes, of course, Maureen, because that's why these skills are so important and they have so many areas of application. So that's what we really wanted to talk about today and really get into. So we are going to enter this topic through the idea of teachable moments. And I'm going to show you, we've created a Padlet. I have, there's a bit.ly here, there's a QR code, and we'll also put the link in the chat for you. And I'll show you what it looks like on the screen if you haven't used Padlet before. And we have 3 different teachable moments. So we're going to take, let's say 5 minutes. If it seems like people are still really going and posting, we'll give it longer. For at least one of these teachable moments, you can add a post with your response. And I also recommend that you take a moment to read other people's responses, and you can add hearts to like them. One of the great things, right, you showed up on a Saturday, right? One of the great things of being here on a Saturday is you get to meet all of these other educators from around the country and around the world, and you can take advantage of seeing each other's ideas. So we will I'll put the link to this in the chat, bit.ly/. Exactly. Michelle has faster fingers than me. So that link is in the chat for you. And I'll also go over and show you what it looks like on the screen. So if you have found the Padlet, this is what it looks like. I'll put that link again in the chat, and I'll put the QR code up again too if you're working on multiple devices. If you haven't used Padlet before, we have these 3 teachable moments in this column. One is a student turns in a report on architect Zaha Hadid, including photographs that are not cited. So what digital citizenship skill do students need in this scenario, and how would you teach it in your content area? So we've got our guiding question up on the top here. The second scenario, a student turns in an opinion piece arguing that oat milk is healthier and better for the environment than dairy milk. You notice they've cited an ad from an oat milk company. And the third scenario, class discussions getting heated. Students are not providing evidence and they're questioning each other unkindly, right? That word kindness came up a lot. So once you have found this link, look at all 3 of these, pick the one that speaks to you the most, and share what digital citizenship skill do students need in the scenario, and how would you teach it in your content area. And to add your idea, you click this plus sign below whichever teachable moment you'd like to respond to. And you can, maybe you want to start, maybe I'm a 4th grade teacher. You don't have to put a title, but you can write something. I would teach, you can even add links, you can upload something, you can add photographs, you can even draw. You have a lot of options here for how you'd like to share your response. You can record a video or audio. But you can also just respond to the question through typing. And when you click publish, it will pop up and someone can even add a heart. So again, I'll show this QR code if you'd like to join this way, but we also have that Padlet link in the chat. And you can refresh it. Oh my gosh, you all are so fast. That's the thing. I didn't refresh, so I didn't see all of your speedy responses. So I'll give everyone a few moments to respond to these, right? We can see how many people are joining. And after you've written yours, you can go in and add a heart to any of the ones that you appreciate. So the Padlet link is right here. And I'm going to look through these while you're responding. Awesome. Look at all of these great responses already. And you can refresh your screen as well to see more as they come in. I'm going to hit refresh. And this link will live on. So if you'd like to revisit any of these later to get some ideas from all the people that you've interacted with today, this isn't going anywhere. And if you've already written a response, feel free to write another response to a different scenario or go through and read ones from all the folks who are with us today. And we're seeing some of those words in the skills we named earlier, right? We're seeing, or that we pulled out of the definitions, right? Respect, kindness. And look, we even have someone added a nice little GIF, right? There's multiple means of expression here. So I'm going to give everyone a few more minutes. We already have a ton of responses coming in fast. Oh, and you can even change the color of your little box too. Again, we've got some people adding images. So if you haven't already, go ahead and take a look at other responses to the same scenario you responded to, the same teachable moment, and also take a look at some of the other ones in other columns. I'll give everyone a moment to peruse. Someone added a link here as well. Yes, and add a heart to other ideas you like or something you'd like to try. So I really agree that I think this is a great point. Empathy is key in having students understand why credit is given. So I'll add a little heart. Gloriana asked, how do you do that? Do you mean how do you change the color or how do you add a post? Right, we're seeing more and more responses coming in. These are great. I'll refresh to make sure I'm not missing any. You can see that there. I'll also note Padlet is free. You have a limited number you can create, but this is free if you would like to use this tool with your students. How to see the posts. So if you're on the Padlet, you should be seeing these posts. If you aren't, you can refresh the tab and they should pop up. And thank you, Sarah shared the link again if you need it again. Look at all of these responses. Oh my goodness. I'm so appreciative of this, especially on a Saturday. I'm really appreciative of your engagement today. Okay, we're going to come back into these and we're going to go through each of these one by one. Thank you so much for your participation and sharing all your great ideas in this Padlet. And save this link. You can refer back to it later. Maybe 6 months from now, you're teaching about citation or a class discussion is getting heated. You can always refer back to this later. Is there a way to see everything at the same time? So you should be able to, just from the Padlet link, see exactly what I'm saying. So I have the exact same link as you do. Okay. So we're going to come back and look at these to our deck and look at these one by one. So first teachable moment, student turns in a report on an architect, Zaha Hadid, including photographs that are not cited. So what digital citizenship skill do students need and how would you teach it? So if you didn't address this one in the Padlet or want to contribute in the chat, you can share in the chat what skills needed to be taught here. So we're seeing that I'm seeing citing sources. If we had a word cloud here, it would be citing sources over and over and over again. And I really appreciate that someone added that empathy is key. It's not just you need to cite sources, but why do we cite sources? Why is that important? Right, respectfully, citing sources, right? So we're seeing a lot of modeling how to cite sources. So we're going to talk about how you can teach students to give credit. This is going to echo so much of what you already shared in the Padlet, and I'll point out some resources you can use to do this going forward. So the first thing is copyright, right? This came up a lot in the Padlet responses, the importance of citation. We have to teach what a copyright is, right? Students don't know if they're violating copyright if they don't know what a copyright is. So we have to explain, right? Copyrights are legal protections given to authors of creative works, right? And then we can get into some of that empathy that someone mentioned on the Padlet, that think about if you made something, right? What if I took a photograph I was so proud of, right? Maybe I'm just learning to take photographs. And then I saw that someone else used it and they didn't give me credit for it. So you have to build that empathy as well for why this is important. This isn't just a thing my teacher's telling me to do, but what is the underlying reason behind it, right? What is the underlying respect behind giving credit to work? The other thing we need to teach about is plagiarism, right? And again, that respect is coming up again. We show respect to creators by citing their work and not passing it off as our own, right? And that, again, this needs to be explicitly taught. And this comes up in across the content areas, right? If I'm writing a research paper in social studies or ELA, this is going to come up all the time. If I'm doing a lab in science and I take someone else's data, right? That's not my work, that I didn't do that experiment. So this, I'm sure, applies to all of your content areas. And if you're thinking about this maybe in a different way, or something's coming to mind like, yeah, this digital citizenship skill is applied to my content area in a way I didn't think about before, definitely pop that in the chat. And even with our little ones, right? We put our names on our drawings that we make together. And because we worked hard on this and we want our name on it, we made it. We don't want someone else to pass it off as their own. Oh, I love that, Penny, right? Using music in a PowerPoint that isn't yours, right? Making sure you cite that song. I didn't write that song. I didn't record that song. I didn't produce that song. That's great, Penny. Thank you. I did notice a bunch of folks just joined us, so maybe you're leaving from one session and coming to another session. We are talking about some different teachable moments of digital citizenship skills that pop up across the content areas. So we're talking now, our teachable moment here was that students turned in a report on an architect named Zaha Hadid, and they included photographs that weren't cited. So what is the skill that students need here, and how would you teach it? And the last thing we need to teach, right? We've taught sort of the background knowledge around why we cite, right? What is plagiarism? What is copyright? Those social and emotional skills behind why we do this, right? That empathy. And we explain that we cite our work not only to avoid plagiarism, but to show where we got our ideas, right? If I have a bibliography, it's not just that I don't want to be stealing someone's idea. It's also that maybe I want to show my teacher, look at all the research I did, look at the different sources I used. And that plays into what people have brought up over and over as well of identifying sources, evaluating sources. And I can't properly evaluate my sources if I don't cite them. So this is something I think that comes up more in the upper grades, right? When you're doing more bibliography work. But again, we're talking about not just what we don't want students to do. It's not just plagiarizing is bad. It's we also want to show the positivity. What's a good reason why we cite our work? Yes, evaluation, exactly. It's a checking tool, right? Maybe you get some feedback on your writing that, you know, this is skewed, right? Maybe it's not objective. Let me go back to my citations and see, okay, maybe I need to evaluate these sources some more. And there are resources on BrainPOP for this. We have, this is in our digital citizenship collection on citing sources, research, online sources, copyright, plagiarism. There are BrainPOP topics on all of these skills. And I also pulled from Common Sense Education. They have a lot of great resources across the grade levels. They have a really good one called Let's Give Credit. And I noticed a lot of you are already using Common Sense, so you may already be using these lessons, but I highly recommend checking them out. Oh, David, I love that. It tells your reader where to get more info too, right? Maybe I wrote a paper about something, my reader was really intrigued by this topic, they want to learn more. Now they know where to go to learn more. So I think that's a great point. It's also about being in a community, right? We're a community of learners together, and I want to help my community know where to learn more information. I'm really glad you brought that up, David. Thank you. Okay, we're going to look at our next teachable moment. A student turns in an opinion piece saying oat milk is healthier and better for the environment than dairy milk, but you notice their citations are an ad from an oat milk company, right? Maybe it's an Oatly ad, perhaps. So what skills do students need in this scenario, and how would you teach it? So we're going to go back to our Padlet, right? What is bias, right? I saw a lot of stuff about author's purpose. I love this picture of an advertisement. Who's pulling the info and where to find the about section of a website, then lateral read, right? I love that. Right? What is the source? What might the motivation be for this source, right? Really evaluating, we talk about this as little as K, right? Author's purpose. Why did this author write this? Were they trying to persuade you, entertain you, teach you something, right? Marketing and who's paying for things. Right, including multiple points of view, right? Someone added this image here, right? Compare and contrast different sources, using multiple sources, reputable sources, showing counterpoints, the purpose of ads and .com sites. Yes, right. Sometimes it's as simple as what is the end of that URL, and reliable sourcing. Yes, I love this. Teach students that ads are meant to persuade the viewer, pursue them, and they should cite evidence-based research. Awesome. Okay. So I want to share a few more resources and how you might teach this directly. So we can teach our students some guiding questions. And again, this is for anytime students are doing research and writing, which happens across the content areas. We can teach students to ask themselves these questions. Who is the author and what is their point of view? This is something that's taught in ELA all the way down to kindergarten. What is the author's purpose? What would be the motivation for sharing misleading information? So why might someone only highlight half the facts, right? As writers, we're trying to compare and contrast, we're trying to show all viewpoints. Why might an author not do that? And these are guiding questions that can be posted. They're guiding questions and you model and think aloud as you, as an educator, are modeling research and modeling evaluating sources. You can use these as think aloud questions, and they'll become eventually ingrained in students as they're looking at different sources. People mention this a lot in the Padlet, comparing and contrasting. What do these two sources have in common? Why might the authors have different purposes, right? If you are the Got Milk campaign and you're Oatly, you have different purposes because one of you is trying to sell dairy milk and one of you is trying to sell more oat milk. And I want to highlight an activity you can do. This is I created this in the same BrainPOP tool I use to document our digital citizenship ideas, but you could do this on chart paper. You could do it in a Jamboard. You could really use anything where you can make shapes and arrows and pull in pictures. You could do this activity. So this activity was, the student was asked, how does bias impact how information was shared? So you can do this to model as a whole class, or you can do it, have students do this individually. And this student was looking at this question of, is milk healthy? And they're looking at advertisements like Got Milk, articles, milk, a danger to the planet, social media posts, 10 ways milk ruins your skin, right? We see a lot of list articles. And as the student digs deeper, they've noticed that this was sponsored by an oat milk brand, and they're naming that as bias because they want to sell oat milk. Or maybe that this article on milk being a danger to the planet, they noted it was written by a PETA activist, and that author has a very specific purpose. And then Got Milk as an advertisement, right? and it's created by the Milk Production Board, and they're trying to sell milk. So this student is looking at their sources, naming their messages, and noticing who's sponsoring this, right? What is the bias here? And this is something you can do on a more complex level with your older students, and even with your little ones, comparing and contrasting fiction and nonfiction, right? This book is meant to teach me something. This book is trying to entertain me and tell me a nice story, right? You can do this across the grade levels and across the content areas, teaching students to ask questions and dig deeper. So we have resources for this on BrainPOP, on media literacy, which is one of my favorite topics, online sources, fact and opinion, point of view, and Common Sense has great lessons on finding credible news. So specifically evaluating news resources, looking at the author's purposes behind them. I really love these Common Sense lessons. And so now we're going to look at our last teachable moment. And this one, I think, is really universal, regardless of the content area, regardless of the age level. Anytime you have a group of people in a room, there might be conflict. How do we handle that, right? Discussions are getting heated. Students are not providing evidence and are questioning each other unkindly, right? And even if a student forgets to cite evidence, that doesn't mean we should be disrespectful, right? We named those skills, kindness and respect. We want to see that from our good digital citizens. How can we do that? So let's take a look at the Padlet here. So students need to learn empathy, that they should respectfully provide their opinions, take turns talking, right? Sort of debate rules, an SEL lesson on respecting viewpoints, the importance of evidence, right? Class rules, right? Classes have norms, encouraging students to find evidence, conversational etiquette, right? We talked a lot about students thinking before they post, right? We also want students to think about how they speak to each other. And if they're practicing these skills verbally, right, in conversation, then that will translate to their online lives as well, right? And we can practice it within the safe space of our classroom, right? If kids get into an argument in the classroom, you can pause, you can model, this is how we can talk to each other respectfully, this is how we can cite evidence for our ideas, and they're practicing those skills in a safe space. Just look at a little more role play prior to discussion. Give students a format for responding and giving feedback. I love that, right? Maybe you just need to take a time out. We're going to refer to our social and emotional learning strategies, apply a calming one, review those norms. I love that. I'm going to add a little heart here. Empathy has come up again and again. So we need to teach students, or again, how do we have respectful discourse? The first thing we need to do is provide that language. I saw modeling referenced a few times. As someone who taught English as a new language for 7 years, I think the language is always my lens. We can't expect students to say things when we haven't provided or modeled that language. And even if our students are not learning English, they still need to learn this language, right? No one is born immediately knowing all the language around respectful discourse. So we want to make sure that we are modeling that for students and giving them that language. And there's a few different ways you can do this. Please feel free to type in the chat some ways that you teach your students respectful discourse. I have some of my favorite strategies. I'm sure you all have favorite strategies as well. I love accountable talk, right? It's a really simple way to provide that language for how we agree, how we disagree, how we provide evidence, how we request evidence from others. So Subrenia shared sentence frames, absolutely. Role playing, sentence stubs. Right, within that safe sandbox. teaching debate and group discussions, bridging gaps between ideas, right? These are all skills we have to learn. And why not just teach them explicitly? Oh, I love that, Karina, right? Not just examples, but non-examples. So as a parent, reading the news together and looking at public figures who do not have respectful discourse, right? I used to do this, I co-taught K through 5. So I was co-teaching with 6 different people, and we would often model that together. So like Miss Zeno and Miss Warren would model for the students, are they having respectful discourse? What are Miss Zeno and Miss Warren doing to show each other that they respect each other? Or maybe we provide a non-example. Like, I noticed that Miss Zeno was rolling her eyes at Miss Warren, and she's not showing respect to her in this conversation. So especially if you have more than one adult in the room, it's always a great thing to be able to model that. Or you can have, obviously, also have students model that. I love that, Martha. Observing a video and commenting on attitudes and thinking about how to improve message and tone. Right? So there's a lot of different ways we can model what we want to see from students. And it may go from your class discussions, and then they can practice those skills and apply them in a digital space as well. Oh, I love that, Kristen, talking about the difference between intent and outcome, right? Maybe I didn't mean to be disrespectful to my classmate, but if that's how it landed, we should take responsibility for that and figure out how we can move forward together. Ooh, I love that, Gloria. Modeling and then practicing. We don't just show it once, we make sure we provide a lot of opportunities for practice, moving from, sage on the stage, guide on the side, mentor in the middle. I love that. See, this is why it's so great to have over, almost 200 people all together on a Saturday talking about this. And then to go along with just the respectful language, we also want students to cite evidence and request evidence, right? We cite evidence in verbal discussion as well as writing. And again, from my language lens, it's easier to, we can't write something we can't say. So we want to practice those skills of, I learned that, or as I read in this book, or I read yesterday, and citing evidence that way. If we do it verbally, that will transfer to our writing, and it will transfer to our digital lives as well. And we can respectfully ask for sources, right? There's many respectful ways to say, how did you know? Or I'm interested where you got that information, right? There's a way to do that that's not just respectful. And again, that's more language we need to provide to our students and the little ones in our lives. So one way I love to do this, people mention sentence stems and sentence frames and modeling. I really love Accountable Talk. This comes from Teacher Toolkit, which is a great resource online. They model a lot of strategies. So they don't just give you this little sentence stem PDF. They also have videos of this in action. So great way to see strategies actually in action. And so we have, I believe because, I agree with this person because, I respectfully disagree, because respectful discourse doesn't just mean we're always agreeing, right? We have to show respectful ways to disagree. And right, again, on page X, it says, so I think, you can ask for clarification. Can you please clarify what you mean? Do you mind clarifying? I'm interested in hearing more about. So we can provide this language for our students, practice it in our safe sandbox, and then give many opportunities for practice so it can be applied out in the world. And this echoes so much of what you already had here on the Padlet. And again, we have BrainPOP topics that can support with this, conflict resolution, different activities we have that prompt students to cite sources, and Common Sense also has a really great SEL collection. Castle, of course, has great resources as well on respectful discourse. If you put Accountable Talk into your search, you will see so many examples and research and visual aids for this as well. So there are a lot of resources for your toolkit on supporting students to have respectful discourse. Ah, yes, Rachel, look, Rachel found it right away. The Accountable Discussion site on Teacher Toolkit. Thank you so much for finding that and sharing it. And again, these are these skills that you named as being good digital citizens, but it doesn't just need to live within, okay, this week we're teaching digital citizenship, or I noticed on the computer that the students need some support here, you can carry this through every single day of the school year. So you all shared so many amazing ideas. I want us to do some reflection on the Padlet. We've added some more columns at the end, and I would love to know, how will you teach your students about digital citizenship going forward? And how will you embed these skills across the content areas going forward? So, right, the two big focuses of our day, teaching digital citizenship and then embedding those skills across whatever content you're teaching. So we've got the Padlet link in the chat again. I'm going to refresh in case I've missed anything. And we see these two last columns here. So folks are already starting to respond. People are really enjoying finding different colors. So I'll give everyone a few minutes to respond and then also look at each other's responses. Just looking at the chat. Rob, that's a great question around science and math, right? That the SEL skills can be taught anywhere, particularly through modeling, but what hard skills can be taught in these contexts. So I think you're right that everything we talked about discussion, what is cross-content area. In terms of science and math, I think there's also a lot of responsible use of technology. I'm especially thinking a lot about science labs, or if you're citing data in an experiment, making sure that that data is your own. If you're looking at other research studies, did someone commission this study, right? That media literacy piece plays into that as well. So those are just a few ideas off the top of my head, but I'm wondering as well, we have a lot of experts here. How are you teaching digital citizenship in math and science? Awesome. Pia shared in the chat a resource, Developing Digital Detectives. That's great. Communicating with students and reminding them about classroom rules, metacognitive skills, revisiting classroom. Revisiting classroom rules. I'm going to refresh this. Right, so common sense, a great tool for your toolkit. Coming back to that golden rule. Providing time for teachers to plan and review lessons. Yes, right, this takes time. Right, using those teacher toolkit videos to model respectful discourse, right? You don't need to reinvent the wheel. Those exist out there, and you can show them to students and have them name what they're seeing about discourse. Accountable talk protocols. Common sense. Ooh, morning announcements, Tech Tip Tuesday. Role play and verbal communication for pre-K. Oh, I love this. By being a student of digital citizenship in all its forms. Also, I like how you use scenarios to examine skills they need. You can do this with your students as well, right? Maybe pose some of these to your students and say, someone shared in the report didn't cite this picture. What do we think about that? What would the student do the next time? Right? Or model making that mistake, right? The same way in shared writing, we may model making mistakes. We can do that with these skills as well. And yes, heart any of these that you would like to try. Oh, Karina, great idea. How do scientists respectfully disagree, right? There's a lot of disagreement in the scientific community. How do you become a citizen of the scientific community? Yes, conversations around research and vetting information for labs. Okay, and embedding these skills across the curriculum. Oh, I love this modeling, providing narration on how I cite sources, right? That's such a great way to model. You only need your voice to do it. Giving credit after readings, classroom discussions, accountable talk. Yes, if you can't say it, you can't write it. That was sort of a little mind-blowing breakthrough I had my first year of teaching language learners. PBL is great pedagogy for transdisciplinary learning. That includes technology standards. Yes, there's a lot you can do here with project-based learning. Yes, if you have a classroom assistant, you can role play and model with them, especially in early childhood. There's so many great ideas here. Library time, definitely a good time to talk about author's purpose. I'm gonna refresh to make sure I didn't miss anything. Yes, disrespectfully disagree and the impact it causes. Absolutely, Rob. Let's take a look at what happens when scientists disagree and what is the impact of this. Lots of real life examples. And if you haven't already, go through and you can add hearts to anyone you particularly like. Right, people have added resources as well. Thank you to Pia for adding a link to the book. Right, this is a living resource for all of you. Okay, we have just a few minutes left, so I'm going to start to wrap us up and make sure to leave time for any questions, but I'm going to read one more response. Yes, planning is key. Am I in touch with my kids? Am I asking them about their digital lives? Do I have SEL norms in place? Do we have a common vocabulary for these discussions, right? We want to give students the language they need to have these conversations, and that can happen across your content areas. A math idea that just popped into my head before I forget. I'm thinking about proofs. I'm thinking about geometry. I'm thinking about how many of our math curricula now require students to explain their thinking. It's not just, I did the math, but how did you get here? And how do you have a conversation around that, right? How do you disagree with someone's method or say, how did you get your answer? Why did you do it this way? A lot of those respectful discourse skills apply to math there as well. So our goal for our time together was that after our feels like a short hour together, you will be able to teach the concepts of digital citizenship, as well as embed those skills across your subject areas. So the most important thing I have to say to you today is thank you. You all showed up on a Saturday and you weren't just passively listening in the background while you did other things, even though no judgment, we've all done it. I'm so appreciative of your engagement, all the amazing ideas you're sharing, and the commitment you have to the students and the children in your lives. So I have an eval here. If you could take a few moments to fill it out, it would be really helpful for us to know going forward what we can do better, what was helpful to you. So that link is in the chat. There's a QR code on the screen as well as a bit.ly. And my email is here as well if you'd like to be in touch. I'd love to hear what you're trying in your classroom and how it's going. And I agree with Karina, really impressed with the level of the ideas on this Padlet. So definitely hold on to that Padlet link, refer back to it later. This was an awesome conversation. So if you have time, we'd really appreciate you filling out this evaluation. So I'll leave this up here and I'm here to answer questions you may have in the chat. And I hope that you have a great rest of your Saturday with us and that you join more sessions, join our closing, and leave feeling empowered to support your students and the children in your lives. I do see a hand up. If you'd like to, you're welcome to unmute yourself if you'd like to ask a question on the mic.
Hi, Marley. I just wanted to point out that most of the PDs that I go to, the scale is switched. And so if you get a lot of the 1s and the 2s, I mean, the 4s and the 5s, it's because usually the PDs that I go to, the 4s and the 5s are the higher ratings, but I noticed in yours, it's flipped. So just wanted to point that out.
I appreciate that. So you'll see, making sure you're reading before you fill out. So 1 is very much and 5 is not at all. Thank you for pointing that out. And this is what the eval looks like. It is literally 3 questions. So it's really helpful for us if you do have the time. Thank you, Deborah. Thank you, Sally. Thanks, David. Thanks, Maria. Thank you, Judith. Thanks, Violet.
How do we get back to the main lobby?
I believe through the Zoom event. I think you leave this session and then you can rejoin the the next session you would like to join. So we have the next sessions, I believe, don't start for another 15 minutes. So you can either rejoin the lobby or you can grab a snack or whatever you need to do before joining a new session. There is a 15-minute break. Exactly, Diane.
Thank you.
Yes, and there is a break activity with Carrie Rogers Whitehead. And yes, you can leave here and join the lobby. I'll leave this open in case people do have questions for a few more minutes, but you are welcome to go back to the lobby and then pick your next session.
Thank you. It was a wonderful PD.
Thank you so much. Thanks, Yvonne. Thanks, Laura. Yes, we'll put the link in the chat again for the eval. I'm just going to copy it for you. There we go. This session has been recorded, so because you signed up today, you'll have access to this. It usually takes Zoom events maybe 24 hours to process. So by tomorrow, Monday morning, you should have access to this whole recording that you can refer to later.
I'm sorry, just a quick question. When you go to the lobby, there's actually no Zoom session that's available. That was our main session. So do
So
we
there
wait
is a
until 11 o'clock?
yes, so there's a break between sessions. So you should be able to depending on your time zone, at the top of the hour, the next session begins.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you for coming. So we're here in case you do have any questions, but feel free to hop off whenever you would like. Thank you, Ro. Thank you, Shelia. Thanks, Leah. So we've got this evaluation one last time, if you do have time to fill it out. And we hope you have a really great rest of DigCit Connect and a great rest of your weekend. Thanks, Heidi. I hope it's not too smoky in Washington right now. Good, I'm glad. Okay, I think we'll go ahead.